Hello, and welcome to another edition of B.T.F.O. Today we're going to be talking about two movies, both of which came out recently, and I'm talking about both of them today because there is actually a lot of stuff that I want to cover with the B.T.F.O. and one of these things I am going to try and talk about, but there's a lot of stuff that I can't really get into because it's spoilerish, so I figured that putting these two together would make a lot of sense. So today we're going to be talking about Presence and Flight Risk, both movies that came out 2025, and we'll start with Presence. Presence is really good. I would recommend Presence, but it's a little hard to talk about without getting into spoilers. So I will do my best to not spoil it by changing the names of the characters when I talk about some of the things, and I'm going to try and keep it vague so that if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I would really recommend that you just go see the movie. It's really good. But so basically, Presence is a ghost story, but from the POV of the ghost. And so that leads, cinematography wise, it has a lot of really cool long takes and neat perspective shots, and it's got a pretty neat story. It is similar to another movie that came out, I believe 2001. I think that's about all I want to say, because I feel like if I say the name of the movie, that might give away some plot details. But it's another movie that is well regarded. I like quite a bit, but it's a bit more simplified than that movie. And I think it works well for Presence. And that's not to say that it's a copy, because it's definitely not. It's very much its own thing, but they are similar stories. Kind of like, I guess, Ayn Rand's Anthem and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. They both draw heavily on the story of Prometheus, but are both very different stories. So that's kind of how Presence feels when compared to that 2001 movie. But I really like the fact that, looking back on the movie, which I've only seen it once, I do want to go see it again. But it's really neat thinking about all the stuff that did happen, and there are characters and little plot details that didn't, they seemed kind of insignificant or very much in the background throughout an initial viewing. And looking back on them, they are very significant to what ends up happening. And I think that's a really neat thing that the film does really well. If I were to pick out some things that the film doesn't do quite so well, I would say that while for the most part the dialogue is pretty good, there are a few moments where it feels like we could have refined it a bit better. Where there's a moment where a character is talking about when they feel the ghost, they feel, and I forget the word, but it's something phobia, and another character has to ask them, like, what is that? And they go, oh, well, that is the fear of being lost or forgotten. And it's like, well, okay, so how about instead of that, like, I get it, you know, the word for that specific phobia, that's cool. Maybe we just have them say that, like, you know, I've been depressed lately, I'm, like, feeling afraid of, like, being forgotten, and I feel like I am feeling that because of the presence that, like, we're surrounded by. You know, I think that would be a bit more natural, whereas this kind of comes off as, like, somebody Googled the word and then typed in, like, the Google word and definition. And then there's also a character, we'll call them Rufy Randall, and some of the things that Rufy Randall says are a bit on the nose, and, like, we get pretty early on Rufy Randall's motivation for why he does everything that he does. It's just kind of like, wow, that's you know, like, that's a very intimate and personal thing to share with someone that you barely met. I don't really, like, and especially as the film goes on with the character that we see Rufy Randall as, I don't really know that he would share that information. Like, I get it that you want us, the audience, to know that, but I don't know that was the best way to do it. There is also, near the end, Rufy Randall, he does his signature trick of roofying someone, and then he, like, goes to meet someone else, and they're like, hey, where's, we'll call him Brandon, and Rufy Randall says, I decided it was bedtime for Brandon. And it's like, I don't, like, that's really suspicious, Rufy Randall. Like, why would you say it like that? Like, you, especially because in this situation, you very much want this person to trust you. So it seems really weird to be like, hey, I'm evil, by the way. Did you know that I was evil? Like, you know, it's a little playing for the people in the back, and it's like, okay, let's, like, you don't need to do that, you know, this is a rated R movie made for adults, like, you can treat your audience like adults, that would be nice. But overall, I would really recommend Presence. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being one of the better films of this year, but I do actually have quite a few films I'm looking forward to this year. And so I guess that'll take us into Flight Risk, which was another film that I was looking forward to this year. I was actually looking forward to it last year, but then it got delayed and has finally come out this year. This is the new Mel Gibson movie starring Mark Wahlberg and Topher Grace. It also stars, I'm not actually sure what the lady's name is. I've forgotten that. But it is a fun movie. I would call it a good movie. I would say that the part that it suffers from the most is the main character, because she is, like, she very much suffers from being generic main character action lady, and it's a little disappointing, especially when you've got both Topher Grace and Mark Wahlberg are just oozing personality throughout the movie. They're both very fun to watch, and then she's just sort of like bland and kind of generic, and I don't necessarily think that's the actor's fault or the actress's fault, but like more so just the character she was given, where like they try and add in a bit of backstory, and like that's neat, but it doesn't really go as far as like you need to make her a really compelling character. Whereas like Topher Grace is a lot of fun. He plays this like accountant for the mob that like basically the feds end up catching him, and he makes a deal to like narc out the mob boss, and then in return he'll get immunity and like witness protection. But the whole time he's like very much wisecracking, and like it's a lot of fun, where like I really like that he like they get on the plane and immediately he's like, well, what if I need to take a piss? She's like, whatever, it's a 90-minute flight, just hold it. Like and he's like, well, is there like any in-flight entertainment? Like and like I really liked near the end of the movie, he's got a line where he's been stabbed, and so she's like looking in the first aid kit, and she's like, well, they've got some morphine here, like, should I give you that? And he goes, no, I'm afraid of needles, and just pauses for a minute while she's like taking him seriously. And then he's like, no, just do it. Like, just put it in. Like, you know, he's like, what the fuck? Like, what other option do I have? Like, you know, like, of course I want you to give me the morphine. And then Mark Wahlberg is also a lot of fun, where he's not really playing Mark Wahlberg, which is nice. He very much goes for the character that he's playing, which is... the character he plays is, it's not far enough to be like gross or anything, but it does push the line far enough to be like kind of scary, where he plays this like psycho killer who really likes graping his victims and has no qualms about telling them how much he's gonna grape them, and it's nice because it doesn't feel too overt at all, but it paints a clear picture, and so it's kind of nice that it's like, okay, we're still having fun here, but also like, yeah, that's kind of like scary to think about, and especially where like he drops details about like, nah, I'm doing this for free because like I like doing this. It's like, oh, okay, like, all right, yeah, and like the end of the movie, there are some of the payoffs that are okay, that feel like we could have done something a bit better. But I wouldn't say that there's really a whole lot in the movie that is like awful. And so yeah, overall, I would recommend going and seeing Flight Risk. So I guess to end this B.T.F.O on Presence and Flight Risk, I would recommend both of them. I like, really, if you haven't seen either of these and you are interested, I'd really recommend going and seeing them. And that's gonna be it. So, bye-bye.